Hi, my name is Neil Gamroth. I want to thank John for requesting my help here in his project to open up the stamp world to all the participants in his network. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm a retired manufacturing management executive and owner of several small businesses here in the Northwest. Right now, retired, but I've been on and off, semi-retired as a consultant with a small business company that I own, working with economic development with small communities around the country to help them develop their assets and improve their economic situation. I'm located right now in Sequim, Washington, northwest corner of the country, a little bit west of Seattle on the Olympic Peninsula. Ship cover collecting is as complicated or as simple as you'd like it to be, I think. There's several different ways that using philatelic um, premises that you can save and store and enjoy naval ship covers. I think to be a little more specific, I break it down into what I call the different categories of philatelic collecting. And in the case of ship covers specifically, I think that you can start saving what we call topical. It's a narrow content. It could be one stamp on a cover, it could be one country, it could be several interests that you have in, uh, that kind of tie in your special interest to your association with your interest in naval covers. So topical is one. There's special cancels and hand stamps, machine stamp cancels, custom script cancels written by hand. That's another area you can save with naval covers. There's historical, the war eras, political, social, economic, and even inventions of the time, the technologies of radar, ship to shore, communications and radio as it evolved over the history of maritime history. There's also the stamps, and that can be saved chronologically on naval covers. So you've got it could be of a specific country, it could be of a regular postal stamp issue uh, within that country. And there's hobbyists who save only one type of stamp on one kind of cover. There's the geographic caches that are on naval covers, and which are extremely interesting because they can be illustrated pictures of actual ships and vessels. They can be a commemorative of a special event or activity or of historical significance that, say, a city or a chamber of commerce has recorded. In many cases, it's been the port of entry that the ship has located themselves at. So there could be caches of that particular country or that particular port. There's the real picture postcard naval covers, which include the actual photographs that can be inserted into the cache of naval covers, which are very prized and often of historic significance in some cases because they're somewhat scarcer. But there's also utilizing different print techniques that can be embossed or colored or black and white or even metal foil, gold foil, silver foil to enhance the uh, beauty of the covers. And the ship covers themselves, they can cover uh, postcards and envelopes, which both can be saved, depicting information about the building of the ship itself, where the ship has traveled, the uses of all sorts of watercraft, military, passenger, freighter. There's special designs on each of these covers, and it's almost unlimited, but each one helps you reconstruct the history of not only where that cover has been and been mailed to, but the ship that it was canceled on, or the ship that it was carried on, or the port that it left and the port that it was returned. So you look on the back side of the envelopes, and you can see the receiver cancels. Oftentimes they include the special label covers, include the cachet society or club, of which there are many around the world that have produced their own cachets. And there's also the cachet designers themselves who sometimes signature the cachet cover itself as well. So those are the different areas that I would say kind of cover the whole spectrum of ship cover collecting. How do I find these covers? That's another good question. Since I've started really in the mid 1950s, I inherited some of these covers from my father and my father's brother, who in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s were very interested primarily in stamps, but also any unique cover that they saw. And in the era of that time period there, many of the cachets were really just starting to get going. Before that, the postal cards were the very popular, and that was one of the main ways people communicated with one another. So the postcard became kind of, I think, evolved into the cachets or the pictures on envelopes as they started to develop new printing methods and that sort of stuff. But my father and his brother were very active stamp collectors, and I was working with them to help sort and post and put into ring binders and sort of save them. And I've kept accumulating for, like I say, since the mid 1950s. Since then, it's been more of a question of where do you find the space to store it all? So another question is, where do you find these covers today? The acquisitions that I made for my particular collection was by joining various stamp clubs. I used to live in the Chicago area, which is very, very active. Several stamp clubs in the suburbs of Chicago. And when I moved out here to Seattle, I joined the Boeing Stamp Club there, which is extremely active. They had hundreds of members. They had some great boars and stamp shows. That was a great opportunity in the 60s and 70s and 80s to acquire some of these as you go around from booth to booth in the stamp shows. I also go to any garage sale, and first thing I ask is, do you have any stamp memorabilia? And surprisingly, some people don't have them sitting out there, but they know that their father had an album stamped somewhere in the garage or in the house, and they go in and get it and bring it out and say, that's where I've actually acquired some very nice collections. People really didn't think they have any value there or any interest in their garage sales. So you've got to ask the question, and don't just assume that because they got a lot of clothes and appliances out there, they don't have a stamp collection someplace. And that's been pretty lucrative, actually. And there's also the antique fairs and antique shops. My wife and I have traveled all around the country, and we have a list of every antique store up down the West Coast that we acquired a lot of the postcards and quite a few of the covers as well in the antique stores. Nowadays, you can go online and you look at places like Etsy and eBay and Del Camp, and there's probably about a dozen and a half really good sites that have continuing auctions almost every day. You can go on and make a bid for some of these wonderful pieces of history. What do I do with them once I've acquired them? Boy, that's a that's a very dynamic question. There's lots of different ways to create your collections and to store them and to sort them by primarily by topic or by era or by the specific direction you want the collection to go. Right now, there's some beautiful equipment out there, ring binders and Visio clear sheets and protectors that can help you organize your stamps. There's also some really great graphic software out there that can help you scan and collect and create a gallery, a thematic gallery, or just a pictorial gallery of various subjects. That's a great way to store them. That way you can share them. You can put them on a thumb drive and you can take them to your local VFW post or American Legion post or Elks Club and put a little seminar together and a little slideshow for people to see what you're actually doing with your collection. So my storage equipment out here consists primarily of airtight, moisture-proof, and acid-free paper albums of various sorts. You can buy those as a album purchased now, beautifully covered, leather bound, or paper or plastic, all different kinds that you can purchase that are pre-printed, where you just kind of fill in the slots and fill in the spaces. I've yet to see, and it's kind of interesting, I've yet to see an album pre-printed and commercially produced for naval covers. So you're kind of left on your own to how you mount them. I mean, there's sheets that you can put them in the slots and put them into ring binders, but there's not anything out there that I'm aware of, and it surprisingly it isn't, of a particular naval ship or a battleship, or I know there's some out there for Pearl Harbor, but not commercially produced. So you have to kind of make your own, and that can go anywhere from you hand designing the page that you put your mount on and outline them with ink or colorize it, or that you can add a little bit of information below each cover that describes the research that you've done and shows the history and expands on what the cover really represents. And that's been very interesting. And just recently, I went to the Stamp Club and presented about a 20-minute talk on one particular cover that is quite interesting, of a German vessel that was captured by the Canadian military, and found out who the addressee was, and found out that he was a starting member of a naval cache cover club in Portland, Oregon. And on the backside, there was a stamp that showed the guy who actually designed the cache for that particular cover. And the stamps on top of it that were specially canceled were of a particular set. So one cover led me to 2 days of query and exploration and discovery. And this is how I met John, actually, and learned about the museums in Vancouver and Victoria and Portland, and have already corresponded with some of the now still existing Cache Naval Cover Society that was founded in 1934 that still exists in Portland, Oregon. So that's just one example of how one cover can get you deep diving for many, many hours into discovery and research. And now with the internet, it makes it even more fascinating. Well, our question was, are there others who record these kind of covers? And one of the interesting things that I've found is, because I'm past commander of the VFW post here in Sequim, Washington, the topic, of course, comes up, where did you serve and what ship were you on? We've got a lot of naval veterans here in the Northwest with the Bangor Ship Center here and the Bremerton shipyards, of which Originated had built many of the vessels in the area. So there's got a lot of retirees up here in the area. And when I bring these topics up, they're very curious to know that there is this kind of hobby, and it's of interest to them, new interest to them, to kind of reconstruct the ship that they were on, to find the dates that they were on the ship, the cancels of the dates of the time that they were on the ship. And, sometimes the signatures of the people who were on that, the commanders, the skippers, and sometimes just the seamen who were on the ship that are included in some of these, as well as the enclosures, especially when the free mail was happening during World War II. So there's a lot of interest in the veterans because it fills in the blanks of the times that they were serving in the military. And it begins by, reconstructing the dates and times that were of interest specifically to them. It's like a little piece of their past history now in their hands again. So I find that fascinating that they can start some of these veterans on a whole new hobby that they never knew existed. So part of their collecting memorabilia from their military time. How would a beginner get involved? I think it's important, I think, to first ask yourself what events or historical time period is of significance to you or maybe your family that would be of interest to find additional information on. If you go now with the wonders of the internet, you can go and find newspaper first page covers or newspaper articles that begin your search of a particular event. Or if your father was in the military, say a World War II or a Korean or Vietnam person, to find information about that era. There were many military vessels, of course, in World War II that were sunk by U-boats and submarines, and there are certainly a lot of places now, especially like John's Nautipedia, that contain endless information of historical significance that you can't find anywhere else, better than some of the libraries and museums that you can simply type in the name of the vessel that you were on or the particular that you were on and find tons of information about it, opening up new channels to the Smithsonian and the various museums. Just recently found out, like I say, that the existence of a couple naval museums right here, three of them in my location of Victoria, Vancouver, and Portland. I didn't know it, and now be interested into making a trip to visit these places. So I don't discourage, being a beginner. You say, well, where do you find this stuff nowadays? Again, you'd be surprised if you have a goal or a particular event. You might come across it at a garage sale, antique show, but certainly some of the stamp wars where there are boxes and boxes and boxes and trays and tables sometimes that are nicely sorted out that you can ask the vendors for if they have a cover from a particular vessel that you were on or a particular event that is of interest to you. And the cost is not prohibitive. I mean, you can buy some of these covers for 50 cents a piece and have hours of fun researching them, putting them away, filing them, and making your own specific ring binder of whatever particular event you found interest to yourself.